Welcome to Lesson 3, Variables. In this lesson, we're going to discuss how to use variables to represent information that comes from the Circuit Playground Express, as well as maybe how to use a little bit of that information with the Circuit Playground Express. So let's get to it. Okay, so the first one we're going to explore is the buttons. And if you recall, buttons return either a 1 or a 0 depending if they're pressed. So let's create a variable, int. We'll start with left button, and I'm simply going to do LB for left buttons. Remember, you're in charge of these variables. And I'm not going to give it a value because the value of the left button, we're going to pull it in the loop. This is a common mistake in that when students want to interact with the Circuit Playground and they start learning about variables, they feel compelled that the variable needs an information immediately. It doesn't. That information can be retrieved later on. So in this case, we're going to do LB is equal to, and if you recall, in order to get the information from the Circuit Playground at the left button, we're going to type in Circuit Playground dot left button. I know in the previous lesson we simply did Circuit Playground left button inside of a serial print, but recall this is a function. It returns a number, and that number we can put inside of a variable. So just to kind of prove to you that there's nothing special here, no magic, I'm simply going to do a serial print line of LB. The difference here is, unlike the previous lesson when we had a hard-coded value to our variable, this variable, it's going to change. It's going to change depending on whether we actually have the left button pressed or not. So let's try it. So while it's doing that, I'm going to bring up my camera. So the camera's there. It's uploading. Let's go to Tools. Let's bring up the serial monitor. And this should come as no surprise. It's a little smaller. It's going to make it smaller. Or is that the smallest it'll be? Yeah, no, it's not going to make it. All right, so we're just going to keep it here. We could definitely have enough room for screen real estate here. Okay, so notice it's displaying 0 because I'm not pressing it. I'm going to go ahead and press it now. And number changes to 1. But I want you to see the process of how 1's being displayed. The variable LB gets its value from the Circuit Playground left button, and then we're printing that variable. So this variable is actively getting, and I'm just kind of like, click it. It's actively getting information from the left button. This is going to be key. This is how we're going to work with the Circuit Playgrounds going forward. All right, so let me create another variable. Call it RB. And let's do the same thing. Let's give it some information. So RB will get its information from the right button. And I'm going to go ahead and display this a little bit differently. I'm going to introduce the tabs again. And I will print RB. Actually, I'm going to do a print line. When you use this structure of printing a bunch of information, the last one has to be a print line, so you can skip down to the next line. Or else they're just going to come across, and that's not going to be any better in terms of readability. Okay, so there we go. I'll bring up the camera as well. We get 0 and 0 because none of the buttons are pressed. So now I'm going to press the left button. The first one comes up. And now I'm going to press the right button. Right button comes up. And I can actually press them both. So if you kind of think about it, that's pretty cool. We have some capabilities now. We can actually determine whether the person's pressing the right button, the left button, or both buttons. Now, that was just an example of using the left, right button. All the sensors that we've covered so far can have variables associated with them. The only thing you have to remember is what type of information. Is it an integer or is it a float that's coming back from the Circuit Playground Express? The next thing I want to do is I want to kind of tie, this is kind of a silly example because now we're actually, we're doing a lot of serial print. Let's actually get something happening with the Circuit Playground. So, I'm going to leave this example in here. It's not going to hurt anything. Let's do Circuit Playground dot set pixel color. Now, if you recall, and it's been a while, set pixel color needs 4 pieces of information. It needs to know which neopixel and then an RGB combination for the color. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say LB. Actually, I'll create an, let me create another variable. And let's call it combined. Ooh, fancy word. But all I'm really doing here is combined is equal to RB or LB plus RB. Okay. So if you kind of think about it, LB can be 0 or 1. RB can be 0 or 1. So combine, in theory, can have, well, not in theory, in actuality, it can have a variable, a value between 0 and 2. Think about it. If both of these are 0, then 0 plus 0 is 0. If this one is 0 and this one is 1, well, 0 and 1 is 1. And if you flip it around, it'll still be 1. But at its maximum, that means us pressing both buttons, then this could be 1, this could be 1, which means this becomes 3. So I'm going to use that value that we've computed as part of our position. And I'm simply going to play around with the red. So we're going to be able to control which neopixel gets turned on based off this value. Now the other thing I'm going to have to do here, or else we're not going to really get a sense of it, there is another function called Circuit Playground Clear Pixels. Which will clear all the pixels. So we're going to clear all the pixels, we're going to decide which one to color, and then we'll do the whole process again. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a delay of, let's say a quarter of a second. I think that might be enough for us to kind of get a sense of it. If not, all of this is going to happen too quick for us to kind of see the results of us pressing the buttons. All right, so let's go ahead and save this. Let's run it. So now what you're starting to see is, us interacting with Circuit Playground using variables, and then also the idea of using that information to affect other parts. So the result of this information is affecting the result of this instruction. All right, so let's go ahead and pull out the zero monitor as well. I think we could put that there. And let's bring up the... All right, so you can see here the first one is being colored. Because think about it, 0 plus 0 is 0. So the 0 one is covered. Now I'm going to press one of the buttons. Hopefully I could do this time. Notice it switches over to the first neopixel. Why? Because 1 plus 0 is 1. Remember, that's what the value of combined is. It's the value combined of the two buttons. So now I'm going to do this one. Notice it also switches. And let's see if I can do it with both without hiding the third neopixel. Let's see. Maybe I could do it from this side. There we go. So there's one. And now I'm pressing both buttons, so it moved over to the second NeoPixel, or put the NeoPixel in position 2. I'm going to release one, release them both, and it kind of goes back. And now you can kind of think, but now you can actually click on the button, click on all three. I guess I can't put my finger there. I got to do it over here. So this was a very impactful lesson in that, we reviewed the idea of variables, but now we're connecting parts of the circuit playground in that information and tying it to variables, and then use that information as part of another one. Now I use plus sign here, but if you want to get creative, you can actually maybe do something with multiplication as well. Again, it's all about the information and what you decide to do with it. So let's go back to our presentation. So as I just mentioned, storing the information from the circuit playground in variables is very useful. It allows us the ability to use that information with other parts of the circuit playground. And in this example, we did the NeoPixels, where we controlled which NeoPixel got turned on based on what combination of the buttons were being pressed. Thank you.